I'd encourage us to, again, understand that it's because none of us sees the world the way that it is. We see the way the way that we are. If you're the person who people have talked trash about, is it because they made up lies about you, or is it because that's just how they see you? You know? Try to sort those things out. It's difficult on a human level. You know? But unfortunately, we are having to live in the world that's created by our impressions of it. I guess I'll say that again. We have to live in the world that's comprised of our impressions of it. In other words, however it is that we see the world, that's the world that we have to live in. Is the world a scary, dangerous, evil, wicked place?
Yes.
Is the world a wonderful place full of beautiful wonders? And
Yes.
yes, it's both. It's both. And whichever world you inhabit is going to largely depend on your impression of it. And that's why, whether in your own life, for example, whether you live in heaven or whether you live in hell, in your own life is largely dependent on your impression. In other words, what is it that you see in your world? You see a whole bunch of ugliness. You see a whole bunch of beauty. And the truth is that both of those two things are there. But the question is going to be, which one do you see? Because whichever you see says more about you than it does about the world. Of course there's ugliness in the world. Of course there's beauty. But which one do you focus on? Which one comprises you? Okay, so if you sweep at night, it sweeps your luck away? Okay. Oh, there's all kinds of those I can think of then. When you're sick, do you put Vicks on your feet? Anybody? Anybody put Vicks on your feet when you're sick? Yeah, so why would you put Vicks on your feet? To keep them warm. I've heard to keep them warm. I've heard because it makes your feet sweat, which makes all the toxins go out of your body. And then when you're walking around at night, you're supposed to wear socks so that you don't get sick too, right? How does wearing socks stop you from getting sick? Okay, so it keeps you warm. Okay. Now, how about this? Does getting cold make you sick? Trick question.
Yeah.
No.
No, being cold and going into the warm.
So, one more time?
Being cold and going into the warm.
No.
Damn.
Right?
Somebody said one more time.
Sorry. So, I think I'm on the spectrum somewhere because I don't always realize how things come up. I didn't mean it that. I didn't mean to make you look bad. And no, shut up. That was stupid. So the reason that we think that cold, it's just like if you're walking down the street and you get cold, does that make you sick? No. The reason that we think that cold makes us sick is because what time of year do most people get sick? Winter. Now, why winter? We think, well, because it's cold. No, because you're cold. Where do most people go when they're cold? That's a silly way of asking, but where it's warm, and where is it warm when it's cold outside? Inside. So because we're sick, we're outside because it's cold, we go inside because it's warm, but then if any of us have a cold, guess who gets the cold? Everybody, because we're in an enclosed place. And so during summertime, springtime, we're outdoors, we're running around, we aren't in as close a proximity to each other. But when it's winter and fall, usually when it gets colder, now we're all in enclosed spaces, and so we start to share our germs. This is why we get sicker in fall and winter. Weird, right? Because after all, it's called a cold. But that's why it's a myth. It's like anybody have someone in your family that they can tell what sex a baby is going to be based off of where it sits in the body? Maybe you have those things. Yeah, it's not true. There's no correlation between where the baby sits on the body and the sex of the baby. It has to do with the mom's physiology. That's all. But we have these ideas but my mom can usually guess really, really well. And even as I'm saying this right now, some of you are thinking, bullshit. Yes, you can. And Vicks does help, and cold makes you sick. It's just like if you walk in the rain. Does walking in the rain make you sick? No, of course not. If it did, you'd get sick every time you took a shower.
It's not the same.
Nothing is the same.
It's dirty water.
Which water?
Rain.
Rain is dirty water?
Evaporation.
And the water that comes through our rusty pipes is clean?
You got a point.
I know, but I'm indulging you. I'm indulging you. And so, I guess the real question is going to be, how many of us are going to hear what I just said, and are going to look it up to see if what I'm telling you is true? Or how many of us will not even look it up and just say, fuck this guy. That's not what my mom told me. That's not what I learned from my family. That's not what I heard. That's what I believe.
No.
Maybe. What else? Truth, and I saw that. I was eyeing it earlier. Penny. Good luck. Yeah, you find a penny, it's good luck, right?
No.
If it was good luck, I'd find $1. Others. I guess I'll ask this question. How do I ask this question? What might separate those two different kinds of people? Because if it's true that there are people who seek truth and people who just want to believe things, what is it that separates those two kinds of people? The character traits are important, by the way, because if it helps us to understand who we are and which of these things we are. Like, are we a person who seeks truth or a person who just seeks to believe? Because there are things that you can believe that can be true. There are things that you can believe that can be true. Let me ask this. Maybe it might be too broad of a question. I'll ask anyway. Yeah, this might be too broad, but I'll ask anyway. How do we know what we know? Like when you say that you know something, what are the ways in which we learn? Yeah.
Based off evidence.
And how do you gather evidence?
You search for it.
Study it.
Through historical documents.
So you read? Okay, so you're reading. When you're reading, you're going to see. Good. How else might you know?
From your parents.
Google?
TikTok.
So see.
Chat GPT.
I was explaining last period that I'd like to see Chat GPT become embodied. You know, that way I could fight it. So seeing, hearing, very good. Hearing, feeling.
Alright.
Yeah, exactly. Your five senses. So largely we encounter the world through our five senses, and that's how it is that we can gather evidence. So now we can run into a problem. Are your five senses always accurate?
No.
No. And you know that two ways. First off, I wouldn't be asking you if they were. But secondly, your own experience probably tells you this. Have you ever been walking down the hallway and you thought you heard your name and you turn around but nobody called you? Or you thought that you thought that you felt something you didn't feel? Anybody ever at home? You see the people in the shadows, like turn all of a sudden because you see some movement, you turn, there's nobody there. Yeah,
It's a ghost.
Maybe. I'm gonna leave an asterisk next to that one because you guys have heard of shadow people.
Yeah.
Maybe shadow people, perhaps. But assuming that there aren't any ghosts or shadow people, then maybe real. So if it's true that we gain all of our knowledge through our five senses, then first off, there's a lot that you don't really know because you've never experienced it before. And then there's some stuff that you've only experienced because, tangentially. In other words, the Eiffel Tower exists. Anybody ever been to the Eiffel Tower? Okay.
In Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas? No, the actual one. Not the knockoff one, the actual Eiffel Tower. If you've never been to the Eiffel Tower, then you're just going to kind of take my word for it because I've been there. It exists. So in other words, you can hear, but then you have to trust in the expertise of the person who's giving you the information. So far, so good? Okay. So now the problem comes in that if the person giving us the information is either wrong or they just heard it from somebody else. So getting down to the layers of truth is really difficult. And especially if you realize that there are these two types of people. The people who seek truth are the people, you have to be open-minded, but there's another word that almost never comes up when we talk about it, but it's absolutely necessary. It's this word, to be humble. To be humble. It's how you grow, being humble. Because in order to seek truth, you have to first off believe that it even exists. But secondly, you have to believe that you don't already have it. Like if you asked me, Oh, it's kind of, you need to go searching for a red marker. I've already got it. Or worse yet, how about this? It's going to go searching for a red marker. I've already got one. Is this a red marker? No. Yeah, it's close, but it's not a red marker. And you might be like, well, no, but that's not red, Scanlon, that's fuchsia or pink or whatever. I'd be like, close enough. Good enough. With a lot of things in life, good enough usually is good enough. But for some things in life, seeking truth, good enough really is not good enough. It has to be precise. And so somebody else said hardworking as well. That's also connected to seeking truth. But else said, yeah, you have to be humble. You gotta be hardworking. Because this is a really easy thing to do, in quotation marks. But what I suggest to you is that this is not really so easy to just believe. Because we all end up having to live the lives that we choose. And if we live a life of just simply believing the things that we're told, we realize that. And it isn't just this matter of like, you just believe what you're told. A lot of us believe a lot of things that we're told. That's the foundation. I mean, and that's good, by the way. Imagine if you had to rediscover the wheel every generation. Imagine if you had to, anybody in here do electrical work? Anybody here know how electricity works? Yeah, me neither. Hey. No, I ask that because imagine if all of a sudden all the people who know how electricity works were to just disappear. How long would it take us to discover electricity? As a species, it took us a couple 100,000 years to get to that point. Imagine if every generation we had to restart. Yeah. So you have to believe some things that we were told before. That's how knowledge is built up. We stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before us. So we can kind of know some things from people. It's good to test knowledge, of course, because not everything that we think we know, we know. I won't go into it too much. If anybody's into science, if you know about quantum mechanics, there's this really weird paradox where quantum physics and physics can't possibly exist in the same universe, and yet they do, which means that there's something off there, or we just simply don't understand what's going on. Now, that's a huge thing for a very small group of people. But for the rest of us, I mean, thinking about if we're seeking this truth or belief, especially in terms of the interpersonal relationships, we talk to people. What is it that you believe about people? Anybody? Don't raise your hands, but I wonder if anybody in here has had people like start rumors about them or trash talk them behind their backs. And a lot of people, it's just like they hear it and they're like, oh wow. Why? Because coming and talking to you and sorting things out, that's a lot of work, man. You gotta be humble, you gotta be hardworking. Plus it takes courage. You have to approach the person and ask them. And then you gotta kind of put yourself in the middle of a situation that you've been put in the middle of. But I'd encourage us to again understand that it's because none of us sees the world the way that it is. We see the world the way that we are. If you're the person who people have talked trash about, is it because they made up lies about you, or is it because that's just how they see you? Try to sort those things out. It's difficult on a human level. But unfortunately, we are having to live in the world that's created by our impressions of it. I guess I'll say that again. We have to live in the world that's comprised of our impressions of it. In other words, however it is that we see the world, that's the world that we have to live in. Is the world a scary, dangerous, evil, wicked place?
Yes.
Is the world a wonderful place full of beautiful wonders? And
Yes.
Yes. It's both. It's both. And whichever world you inhabit is going to largely depend on your impression of it. And that's why, whether in your own life, for example, whether you live in heaven or whether you live in hell, in your own life is largely dependent on your impression. In other words, what is it that you see in your world? You see a whole bunch of ugliness. You see a whole bunch of beauty. And the truth is that both of those two things are there. But the question is going to be, which one do you see? Because whichever you see says more about you than it does about the world. Of course there's ugliness in the world. Of course there's beauty. But which one do you focus on? Which one comprises you? And then, of course, that's also going to create the world that you perceive around you. And so there are those two types of people. It's interesting, by the way, that some of you brought up religion. The last period they brought up religion as well. Has anybody ever heard of this guy before? Mm-hmm. Nietzsche? He has said some things that I guarantee almost everybody in here has heard of.
His mustache.
Yeah, his mustache kills it. But you've heard the saying before, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Yeah, that comes from him. He wrote that. It doesn't come from a song. That's his idea. But it's important in that case to pay attention to the pronouns he's using there. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. He doesn't say, remember guys, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Not everybody is made stronger by the things that don't kill them. Some people are made jaded, angry, resentful, contemptuous, all kinds of ugly things. Some people actually are made better by the difficulties that they go through. We become better when we go through struggles. We don't become better when we avoid struggles. And I would suggest to you that truth requires struggle. It requires us to be humble. It requires us to be hardworking. It requires that we have to put things aside. To believe is the complete opposite of that. It's to try to avoid struggles. But the truth is that you're going to struggle either way. You can struggle for truth, and you can struggle for belief. You can struggle because you're trying to become better, or you can struggle because you've just kind of resigned yourself to being worse. One of them at least carries some level of satisfaction, which is the seeking of truth, versus kind of giving up and becoming whatever you allow the world to make you. So, the reason I mentioned that it's interesting that you guys bring up religion is because he has another very famous saying, which is he proclaims that God is dead. That comes from him too, if you've ever heard that before. God is dead. He also said that. And so trying to reconcile those two things with the same character, he's an absolutely fascinating personality. In terms of the world of thinking, whether it's science, philosophy, history, there's a world that's before Nietzsche, and then there's a world that's after Nietzsche. This is the dude, by the way, who sold 1,500 copies of his books while he was alive. That's it. That's it. Most of them were to universities. And then he goes through a long period where he's kind of misunderstood quite a bit. You guys remember World War II? Yeah, that was him. That's a long story. I'll tell you some other time, but that's kind of him. He gets blamed for it. And then all of a sudden he comes back out and people realize, he's completely misunderstood. He's someone completely different. How is it that one guy's ideas can push a whole world into a war? Truth versus belief. I'll tell you about it. But, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticism, critiques. They can't all be bangers, man. That was terrible. But we'll try again next time.